Number 10. Ancient Egyptian Ruins. Space archaeologist Sarah Parchak, often called the Indiana Jones of low Earth orbit, recently discovered an incredible ancient Egyptian ruin using new satellite technology. Sarah employed remote sensing tools and satellite imagery to expose not one, but a whole collection of forgotten archaeological sites from lost cultures. Her area of expertise happens to be Egypt. To date, she's found no less than 3,000 ancient settlements, over a dozen pyramids, and plenty of tombs, all within the confines of the ancient city of Tanis. Sarah was also the one who managed to identify the scope of looting that happened after the Arab Spring in 2011, finding dozens and dozens of plundered tombs using satellites. The thousands of settlements Sarah identified using satellite imagery have yet to be explored, never mind excavated, but the important part is knowing that they're there. Sarah has also found an old Roman harbor that archaeologists completely missed, as well as a new Viking site in Newfoundland, Canada. She identified what may be the second Viking settlement built in North America. And finally, Sarah was able to uncover a ceremonial platform in the old city of Petra, something that no professional excavator ever discovered, despite Petra being one of the most famous archaeological places in the world. As of right now, Sarah is working to fully map Peru, hoping to find even more lost cities and crumbling ruins from outer space. Number 9. The Loch Ness Monster. As it turns out, the Loch Ness Monster may be so large that it can be seen from space. A shadowy form estimated to be over 100 feet, 30 meters in length, boasting 2 massive flippers, was spotted in the waters of Loch Ness, Scotland, all thanks to a satellite. The image cropped up a little while ago, and scientists spent a full 6 months studying the thing, trying to get a hold on what they were seeing. Experts working with the official Loch Ness Monster fan club are positive this creature revealed in the satellite image is the Great Beast, especially since scientists seem unable to come up with any other logical answer. The president of the club, Gary Campbell, says they've looked seriously at all possibilities. The shape does kind of look like the wake from a boat, except that there are no boats in the lake. The best that anyone can tell is that the creature is underwater swimming south. Unless there's a secret submarine operating in Loch Ness, this object is almost certainly the legendary sea monster itself. You might be thinking, well, what about a log or a seal? These theories don't pan out either because of the shape of the creature in the image. It very clearly has a large head and 2 flippers. It doesn't look anything like a log, and seals don't usually grow to be over 100 feet, 30 meters in length.
Number 8.
The ocean glowing. Satellites have found a part of the ocean that glows. It's no alien activity or nuclear power plant under the sea, though. It's far too big. Recent images taken by satellites have shown over a dozen incidences of bioluminescence in the ocean, with the smallest of them being over 100 times larger than the size of Manhattan. Believe it or not, this is not the first time someone has witnessed the ocean glowing as if a million glow sticks leaked into the waves. The Greeks wrote about the phenomenon, and so did the Romans. Even Charles Darwin recorded seeing waves glowing luminescent when he was aboard the HMS Beagle on one particularly dark night. This was off the coast of South America, with Darwin witnessing bright waves rolling as far as the eye could see. Thanks to new technology, scientists have finally been able to document bioluminescence in the ocean on a massive scale. The satellites, 500 miles, 800 kilometers above the surface of the Earth, took pictures of giant glowing patches of microorganisms that turn the sea bright shades of blue and green. According to Stephen D. Miller, a satellite specialist at the Colorado State University, the glowing is caused by trillions of small bacteria lighting up at the exact same time. Imagine billions of worms glowing bright blue on the surface of the ocean, except way smaller than ordinary worms. The bacteria do this to lure fish close to them so they can feed off their guts. Number 7. Prehistoric Cult. Ancient monuments were found in the desert of Saudi Arabia back in the 1970s called mustatils. They're so old that they predate the first pyramid constructed in Egypt and the erection of Stonehenge by over 2,000 years. These mustatils were built during a long period of time stretching between 8,500 and 4,800 years ago, during what scientists call the Middle Holocene period. They cover an area of at least 77,000 square miles, 200,000 square kilometers in northern Arabia. But technology has come a long way since the 1970s. Recent scientists wanted to get a better understanding of these mysterious structures, so they used satellite imagery and helicopter flybys to study and identify over 1,000 additional mustatils spread throughout the desert. The project was led by a research team from the University of Western Australia, who have actually come up with a theory as to what the structures are. The researchers say these strange stone structures were built by a prehistoric cattle cult. This is in part because archaeologists on the ground found the remains of animals inside the structures, things like cow bones and cow skulls. These animals may have been offered up to the gods as sacrifices. Archaeologist Hugh Thomas says the structures were almost certainly used for ritual purposes during the Neolithic era. However, the big mystery is that scientists don't know what the cattle cult wanted, what gods they worshipped, or what logic they saw in slaughtering their cows to appease their unknown gods. Number 6. Human ancestors. An ancient human ancestor from 2 million years ago has been discovered, all thanks to Google Earth. Lee Berger, a paleoanthropologist, was the one who directed researchers to the fossils of the prehistoric human inside of the Malapa caves near Johannesburg. He was using Google Earth to survey caves in the region when he learned how to identify caves of interest. He marked down over 500 previously unexplored caves in the area, and it was within one of these caves that the new discovery of the homonym Australopithecus sebdia was found. Lee was telling the archaeologists where to go on the ground, and it was thanks to his efforts that they made the discovery so quickly. But what about this new type of homonym? Approximately 130 bones belonging to a pair of youngsters were found hidden inside the cave system. Dr. Berger claims this new type of homonym is a transitional species, meaning that it existed sometime between the African ape man and Homo habilis, the latter of which came before the Homo erectus. In other words, the fossils inside the cave belonged to the missing link, a previously undocumented species that existed between apes and humans. Researchers found that the creature had a very small brain, though its brain was shaped more like a human's than a monkey's. Do you think archaeologists will find more bones as they keep exploring the caves? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. Then remember to subscribe to American Eye for more awesome videos just like this one. Number 5. Antarctic Face. A massive face has been discovered on the surface of Antarctica thanks to Google Earth. The face seems to be a carving potentially made thousands or even millions of years ago. The carving resembles an alien face pushing up through the snow. It's quite distinct as well, with a protruding forehead, thin slits for eyes, a small nose, and an open mouth. The carving is undoubtedly humanoid, though it may not have been made to look like a person, but rather an extraterrestrial. Some conspiracy theorists believe the carving was either left behind by an ancient civilization that dwelled in Antarctica, or even by an alien race that had once lived on the icy continent. Even more amazing is that the face can still be seen on Google Maps today. It hasn't disappeared, suggesting it's not simply some accidental formation of snow and ice. But the area around the face is still obscured by the snow. There could be even more monuments related to the giant face. The problem is that the carving is in an extremely remote part of Antarctica where researchers are probably not going to explore anytime soon. We're going to have to wait until a team of scientists actually goes to take a look, or until the ice melts and satellite images reveal the rest of this mysterious megastructure. Number 4. Lost Pyramid. Egyptologists recently confirmed that there could be 2 pyramid complexes never before explored. This comes after satellite images from Google Earth revealed the shapes of lost pyramids in the middle of the Egyptian desert. One of these pyramids appears to be about 140 feet, 40 meters in width, and 4 distinct sides. From the air, it obviously looks like a pyramid. The second pyramid is a little different. It's a collection of mounds with a triangular-shaped plateau at the top. This means that unlike most pyramids, it's flat instead of pointy at the top. Nobody knows if these are indeed real pyramids or simply shapes made by the desert sands. The one to discover these mysterious pyramids is Angela Michael, a satellite researcher from North Carolina who's been hunting for mysterious archaeological sites on Google Earth for the last decade. Scientists are currently waiting to use special infrared satellite technology to confirm the existence of pyramids beneath the sand before they send their own researchers to do any excavations. If these do prove to be pyramids, they could reveal a previously unknown piece of Egyptian history. This could be one of the most important discoveries in Egypt since the uncovering of King Tut's tomb. But at the same time, there could also be nothing there except dirt. This is the challenge that comes with doing satellite research. Sometimes things aren't always what they appear when looking at them from space. Number 3. Prehistoric Huts. An incredible archaeological site was discovered on the side of a Welsh mountain thanks to researcher Ian Fewings, who had originally been looking for a firing range from World War I. He realized there was something not quite right about the farmland on the mountain and brought this team of archaeologists out to investigate. They were quick to discover a series of prehistoric huts that were likely used from between the Neolithic era to the Bronze Age. The local Aberystwyth Archaeological Society spent roughly 6 weeks excavating the mysterious dwellings to try and decipher what they could about the ancient inhabitants. Ian says they've discovered a lot about how tribes of hunter-gatherers spent their days in the United Kingdom thousands of years ago. One of the most interesting aspects of the prehistoric huts is that they were not meant to be permanent dwellings. Instead, they were seasonal camps where people lived while hunting wild game in the region. They likely followed herds of red deer up into the mountains and then hunted them during the spring. Then in the autumn, after the summer heat, they would seek warmer ground and take what meat they could with them. These seasonal hunting shacks may have been used by primitive people for thousands of years. Archaeologists have also discovered a mysterious burial cairn, small collection of flint tools, and proof that the site was likely first used about 6,000 years before today. Number 2. Atlantis. The lost city of Atlantis may have just been found on the coast of Spain thanks to satellite technology. A team of researchers from the United States analyzed satellite images of what they suspect could be the submerged city slightly north of Cadiz. The legendary city of Atlantis, they now believe, was probably wiped out by a tsunami thousands of years ago and is still lost beneath the waves. Richard Freund, a professor at the University of Hartford, said Atlantis was probably located just along the shores of Spain, with the tsunami that destroyed the city wiping out about 60 miles, 100 kilometers of the land, and pulling a gigantic piece of earth into the sea. Unfortunately, archaeologists haven't actually gone diving in the area yet to check and see if the ruins are real. The satellite images simply show the shape of something that could be a city. However, the researchers found evidence of memorial cities that could have been built by the survivors of the destruction of Atlantis. Richard says that the Atlanteans who managed to escape fled slightly inland and then built new cities, and these potential cities have been identified in satellite images just off the coast. The reason archaeologists haven't identified these mysterious memorial cities before is that the ruins are buried. It's only because of the satellite images that researchers could identify the shape of the cities, even though the structures have long since been destroyed. Number 1. The Murmansk. The Murmansk is a Russian cruiser that once struck fear into the hearts of NATO admirals. It was a powerful machine, the star of the Soviet Navy's Northern Fleet. At least it was until it turned into an embarrassment when it got trapped on a Norwegian fjord back in the 1990s. The warship was unable to be saved and became an eyesore off the Norwegian coast, where it remained an abandoned piece of Soviet technology. The ship crashed in 1994 and was completely forgotten until 2009, when financing was finally gathered to get the ship disassembled. The decision was made to take the thing apart piece by piece. Before the ship was broken apart and taken away, there were some pretty cool satellite images taken of the wreckage. It almost looked like a big steel monster prowling beside the cliffs of Norway. The salvage team had to build an artificial dock around the structure and then rip it apart slowly, finally finishing the project in 2013.
Number 10. Soldiers' Artifacts. A melting glacier in Italy has revealed a collection of incredible treasures left behind by a group of soldiers in World War I. This isn't the kind of treasure that you would get rich, but it does have amazing historical value. These soldiers' artifacts were found inside a cave near the peak of Mount Scorluzzo. This was the place where 20 Austrian soldiers took shelter during the brutal fight of the war. There was a battle going on in the snowy Stelvio Pass. The soldiers not only had to fight the enemy, they also had to fight the extreme cold. They sought refuge in the cave, and when they left, they abandoned some of their supplies. Things like food containers, straw mattresses, scraps of newspaper, their helmets, some old coins, and even pieces of ammunition. They left the cave in the final days of the war in November of 1918, with their artifacts quickly being covered over by the encroaching ice. But just recently, the glacier began to melt, and the artifacts revealed themselves once more. But the amazing artifacts were not the only things to be found near the cave. The remains of 2 frozen soldiers were also found near the same cave just a few years ago, victims of what was called the White War. It's not clear if these soldiers had bunkered down in the same place, but they were almost certainly part of the fighting and succumbed to the brutal environment. Number 9. Lake Whiskey. Treasure hunters have found something delicious hiding in a Canadian lake. They uncovered a single bottle of whiskey from the 1960s. Now, that's definitely not as old as it could be, but the fact that a bottle of whiskey was found on the bottom of Lake Ontario at all is kind of a miracle. And when it comes to treasure, there's nothing better than a treasure you can actually enjoy. But where did this mysterious bottle of whiskey come from? According to local legend, a man crashed his boat into a dock in 1964. When he crashed, he lost his entire case of whiskey. Treasure hunters Dieter Müller and Adam Bloxel wanted to find it to prove the legend true. It took just a handful of attempts before they located the sunken stash and discovered 3 bottles, though only one was still sealed. The whiskey was from the Gooderham and Worts Company and still 100% drinkable. But perhaps the most satisfying part for the treasure hunters was that they were proven right. Nobody believed that the whiskey was actually down there until they dove to the bottom of the lake and found them. They believe there could still be some treasure in the area and hope to go back at a later date to excavate and hopefully find some more liquid treasure. Number 8. Antique lipstick. A woman discovered something extremely valuable while poking around in her old Victorian house. Her name is Kate. and she purchased a dilapidated home in Connecticut back in 2020 with her husband Cameron. The house is 141 years old, and ever since they made the purchase, they have been painstakingly restoring the old house to make it habitable again, including things like modernizing the electricity and plumbing. The house had been sitting vacant for years before they moved in. It was basically just a ruin. They've discovered smoking residue on the ceilings, a hallway that led to literally nowhere, a set of secret stairs, and a mysterious tower at the front of the house, with a window facing inward. It's been quite an adventure, and one of the most fascinating parts has been finding treasures that haven't been touched by human hands for decades. One of the amazing treasures was found hidden behind an ornate wooden mirror positioned above the fireplace. Behind the mirror, Kate found a stash of old gems, but that wasn't all. She also discovered a Victorian cabinet card hidden behind the wallpaper with the town name in the corner, printed around 1890. There were also antique stamps from 1934. And finally, Kate discovered antique lipstick inside a glass tube, part of a vintage makeup kit that was likely used by the lady of the house over 100 years before Kate was even born. I wonder if she put it on. Number 7. Gold bars and plain bathroom. Something amazing was discovered in an airplane bathroom. Workers cleaning the bathroom of a jet after it landed at an Indian airport discovered about $1.2 million in gold bars. Oh yes, this was a very real treasure, and it was left behind in an airplane bathroom of all places. Airport director B.P. Sharma told NBC News after the discovery that it was, and I quote, quite a surprise. And yeah, that is a pretty big understatement. The gold bars were packed inside of bags, so the cleaners didn't know immediately what they were dealing with. It wasn't until they inspected the bags later that they found the amazing hoard of gold. The weirdest part is that the gold was abandoned in the toilet. Nobody knows how or why it happened, though authorities suspect somebody was trying to smuggle a massive amount of gold into the country. The plane was a Boeing 737, which had just landed in Kolkata and was supposed to take off for Patna. The gold bars had probably come from the United Arab Emirates, though the plane had also made a stop in Bangkok. It could have come from anywhere and was likely scheduled to be picked up by someone else at the final destination. But alas, those blasted cleaners doing their job spoiled the smuggling operation, and somebody lost out on a massive chunk of cash. 53 pounds worth of gold to be exact. What do you think the gold was payment for? Who do you think left it behind? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 6. Sunken Nazi treasures. A Nazi aircraft that was on its way to the Eastern Front had been found at the bottom of the sea. It's been described as an underwater time capsule filled with amazing treasure. These treasures include a belt buckle with a Nazi insignia, a soldier's shaving brush, and a pair of boots. Sure, it wasn't filled with Nazi gold, but the historical relics are still pretty cool. And besides, the airplane is a treasure itself. The plane was part of Germany's Luftwaffe, kind of like the US Air Force that operated during World War II. It was discovered by a team of divers at the bottom of the Black Sea, 70 years after it disappeared in the middle of its flight path. Ever since 1942, the fate of the aircraft and its missing crew members had been a mystery. But thanks to underwater photographer Andrei Nekrasov and the rest of his underwater team, the mystery has finally been solved. One of the strangest things about the discovery is actually the boots, which suggests that one or more of the crew members had managed to escape. No bones were found, so they may not have died inside the plane, but rather escaped and swam to shore. Researchers have determined that the plane probably crashed because of weather conditions, with the pilot being forced to make an emergency landing, probably by accident in the water. Number 5. Ultra rare gold coin. A treasure hunter has discovered one of the rarest gold coins ever worth an estimated $200,000. The coin is a gold penny, and it was unearthed by a man named Wes Dean on the border of Wiltshire and Hampshire in the United Kingdom. It is currently the only coin from the late Anglo-Saxon period held by a private individual. However, Wes could sell the coin at any time and have a small fortune. The coin was minted at the time of the legendary West Saxon King Egbert, who ruled between 802 and 839. There are only 8 coins of its kind currently in existence, and they are only held in private institutions, with 7 of them housed at the British Museum. But this is the only coin minted under King Egbert. The others were simply minted between 630 and 1257. Scientists didn't even know that Egbert minted gold coins until this one was found. In June of 2021, The coin was analyzed, with the results showing that it was made from the highest purity of gold, along with smaller levels of silver and copper. This means it's pure and natural gold. It was probably used for high-status payments, like between royalty or the nobility. Either that, or it was only used as part of sacred religious ceremonies. Number 4. Treasure ring. Archaeologists have discovered a lost Inca ring that somehow washed up on a beach in Florida. It has been called the greatest Inca treasure ring ever discovered in America, and it was found by a metal detecting expert named Gary Drayton, who showed off his discovery on the History Channel series Beyond Oak Island. He was near Vero Beach when he discovered the ring, 22.5 carat, and embedded with 9 flawless emeralds. It has been estimated at a worth of around $750,000. Lucky Gary. It probably washed up on the beach because of a hurricane. But how in the world did an amazing ring make it from the Inca kingdom, way down in Peru, all the way up to Florida? The answer goes back to the 18th century, when Spanish, French, and Portuguese soldiers stole as much treasure as they could from the indigenous populations of what is now Latin America. They tried to bring all that treasure home with them in giant galleons. However, many of these galleons ended up sinking. A huge amount of treasure being smuggled was sometimes lost, sometimes up to $200 million worth. In 1715, a fleet of 6 ships carrying precious cargo, and by precious cargo, I mean stolen treasure, was hit by a hurricane while moving through the Florida Strait on July 31st. The entire fleet sank, and all the jewels were lost. This is why the area along Florida's coast near Vero Beach is known as the Treasure Coast. This particular ring was probably stolen from the Inca, placed on that ship, and then lost when the fleet sank. 300 years later, it washed up on the shore. Number 3. Treasure in the well. A man digging a well in his yard found an unbelievable treasure that could earn him up to $100 million. This has to be the most lucrative home improvement project ever. It happened in Sri Lanka when a homeowner named Mr. Gamage needed to dig a well for water. The workers helping him dig the well in his backyard uncovered the largest star sapphire in the entire world, along with a cluster of other brilliant gemstones that turned him into a multi-millionaire overnight. The main jewel is the most incredible. Experts say the stone is roughly 1,000 pounds and about 2.5 million carats. This is why it's worth such an astounding fortune. But perhaps the most amazing part is that the person who found the valuable stone handed it over to Mr. Gamage instead of stuffing it into his pocket. Though, I guess you can't stuff a 1,000-pound rock into your pocket. It took a year of cleaning out the dirt and impurities before the gem could finally be certified. It's been named the Serendipity Sapphire. The renowned gemologist Dr. Gamini told BBC News that it's the biggest sapphire he has ever seen in his life. Number 2. Fossil treasures. 2 amateur paleontologists have discovered a brilliant treasure trove of marine fossils thanks to an unexpected partner. The British paleontologists used Google Earth to find the rare treasure hoard. The couple, Neville and Sally Hollingsworth, were bored during the pandemic and were poking around on the Google app when the unexpected discovery caused them to contact the Museum of Natural History. The couple noticed something strange about the geology in the Cotswolds and suggested that archaeologists get down there and start digging. Amazingly, they did. But what nobody could have imagined is that a 3-day excavation in June, scientists would discover over 1,000 significant specimens, 3 new species of animal, a new ecosystem, and some of the best preserved fossils and ancient sea animals that lived over 167 million years ago. Things like feather stars, sea lilies, and starfish. According to the report from the New York Times, the reason so many amazing fossils were discovered at the site is because there was an underwater mudslide that buried all these creatures in an instant. It was because of the Hollingsworth's sharp eyes and Google Earth that the fantastic discovery was made possible. And number 1, underwater treasure. An underwater engineer discovered the most valuable underwater treasure ever. It happened back in July of 1985, after 16 years searching. Mel Fisher uncovered the shipwreck of the Nuestra Senora de Atocha, which contained within its ruined hull $1 billion worth of treasure. 35 years later, it is still the most valuable shipwreck in human history. The story of the shipwreck goes back to 1622. At the time, Spain was sending 2 fleets per year to both South America and Mexico to pillage treasure and then bring it back home. Silver and gold were mined like crazy and sent by mules to Panama, where it was loaded onto galleons and taken back to Spain. It's been estimated that Spain shipped roughly $8 billion worth of treasure from between 1530 and the late 1700s. But in 1622, there was a treasure so large that a fleet consisting of 28 ships was brought to bring it back to Spain. The galleons, the Atocha, and the Santa Margarita were the largest in the fleet and were carrying the most treasure. Well, both of these ships, along with 6 other vessels, were lost near Key West. Out of all 265 men on board the Atocha, only 3 sailors and a pair of slaves survived. The treasure was lost for over 400 years until Mel Fisher came along and found it. However, the treasure spent 8 years in court before Fisher was awarded full rights to what he found. Since then, he's gotten rich and opened his own museum, displaying many of the treasures inside. Number 10. Kaz II. The yacht Kaz II was discovered drifting aimlessly near the Great Barrier Reef in Australia with no one on board. It would have made a little bit of sense if only a single person was missing, but all 3 of the crew members have vanished without a trace. It turned into a national mystery, with nobody sure what happened to the crew of the ghost yacht. Some claim that the trio on board had faked their own disappearances to collect insurance money, while others suggested that they either died at the hands of drug smugglers or pirates. As crazy as it is to think that a crew of a yacht could be besieged by pirates in this day and age, it does still happen. One of the more unusual theories was that a paranormal event occurred, with the crew either being abducted by aliens, sailing through some kind of otherworldly portal that transmitted them to another dimension, or simply disintegrating into thin air for no reason. Alas, the mystery of the Kaz II was solved recently when a coroner in Townsville, Queensland, finally confirmed that the 3 friends drowned in a freak accident. Even though their bodies have never been discovered, the coroner believes they went overboard and couldn't get back onto their boat. He based his assessment on the evidence, saying that one of the people probably fell overboard while trying to untangle a fish line from a propeller. The second man fell while trying to rescue him. Then when the third man tried to turn the boat around to rescue the 2 guys in the water, the boat swung out, hit him, and knocked him overboard as well. Number 9. The Mary Celeste. The Mary Celeste is the most famous ghost ship in history and one of the most enduring nautical legends. The incredible mystery began in 1872 when the British brig De Gratia discovered an empty boat floating about 500 miles from the Azores. It was the Mary Celeste, which had left New York 8 days before and should have already been in Italy. When the crew of the De Gratia boarded the ship, they discovered something terrifying. All of the charts had been tossed overboard. The belongings of the crew were all still there, and the only lifeboat was missing. There was almost 4 feet of water at the bottom of the ship, and its cargo of industrial alcohol was undamaged. There was only a supply of food and water for about 6 months. There was no sign of the crew, and nobody could figure out what happened to them. Fast forward to modern times, and we still have no idea what happened to the Mary Celeste. But there are some theories. Some say mutiny. Some say pirates. And some even say the sailors were attacked by a brutal sea monster that picked them off one by one. There was even a story floating around for a while that the crew was killed by a pair of psychopathic murdering brothers. However, modern historians, particularly a researcher named Anne McGregor, said that the crew almost certainly abandoned ship abruptly for fear it would sink. However, the question of why has still yet to be answered. Number 8. SS Orang Madan. The story of the SS Orang Madan is nothing short of horrifying. In fact, I would go so far as to say whatever happened to this mysterious boat was impossible. It went down in the 1940s, and accounts vary depending on your source. The most accurate account available is that the Dutch vessel was passing through the Strait of Malacca when something tragic happened. Ships nearby received a distress call detailing that the officers and the captain were dead. The whole crew, dead. Then, whoever was operating the radio uttered, "I die," and that was the end of the distress call. When the rescuers boarded the vessel, they found a massacre. The crew was dead, and their bodies were strewn across the decks. They were also found petrified in final moments of fear, with their faces turned to the sky and their teeth bared as if they had died from fright. Even the dog on board was dead, frozen in the middle of a deep growl. Unfortunately, the ship burst into flames after the rescuers boarded it. They had no choice but to evacuate. Moments later, the ship exploded with tremendous force and sank into the ocean. Not a trace of it has been seen since. The big question remains, what could have been so horrifying to kill the crew and the dog, seemingly without touching them? There are a lot of theories, from aliens to Cthulhu, and even some that say the ship never even existed in the first place. Number 7. The Jenny. The last entry in the Jenny's captain's log was as follows: May 4th, 1823. No food for 71 days. I am the only one left alive. The Jenny set sail in 1822 and was missing in 1823. Not discovered again until 1840 by a whaling ship. At the time of its discovery, the Jenny had been stuck in ice for nearly a decade. It was frozen in the Arctic, along with the petrified bodies of the crew members. The entire ship was mummified, the crew frozen in time. Captain Brighton of the whaling vessel discovered the captain's log on the captain's desk, with the pen still in the frozen captain's hand as he tried to finish his final entry. But here's where the ship became a ghost. The whaling vessel had no choice but to abandon it. The thing was horribly ruined by being stuck in the ice for 7 years, and there just wasn't anything they could do. After all, the crew was already dead. But after they left, that was the last anyone ever saw of the Jenny. Nobody has seen it in 200 years, with some speculating it still roams the ocean even today, her frozen crew trapped in their own worst hell. What do you think happened to the Jenny? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. The American Star. On the west coast of Fuerteventura, there is a wrecked ghost ship that once went by the name the American Star. It was a luxury cruise vessel and is today almost completely submerged by the rolling waves. The ocean liner began its life in 1939 under the name SS America, baptized by Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. The ship changed its name in World War II to the USS West Point, and it went through the entire war without taking any damage. Then, the boat was converted back into a cruise ship, but over the years, the ship was renamed again and again until the 1970s, when the ship began to get a little too old. It lost its charm. By the 90s, the ship had been purchased and sent to Thailand to be turned into a luxury hotel. A tugboat had the job of towing the ship to Southeast Asia, but on the way, the convoy encountered a violent storm near the Canary Islands. The American Star was destroyed. No matter how hard they tried, the ship could not be rescued. The crew had to be evacuated by helicopter. Ever since then, the ship has remained in the exact same spot. The locals have since changed its name to El Barco Fantasma, which translates roughly to the ghost ship. In the early days of the ship being wrecked off the coast, it became quite the local attraction. However, some people allegedly died when trying to explore the ship. This is where it got its creepy new name from, as the locals say that the souls of the explorers are still trapped in the rapidly sinking vessel. Number 5. Rayu Maru. Back in 2011, when Japan was hit by the brutal tsunami, they lost many of their boats. One particular vessel became a ghost ship that the US Coast Guard decided to sink by firing at it with their machine guns. The Rayu Maru was already due to be scrapped when the tsunami hit. Because of this, the Japanese owner had no desire to get it back. In the morning of the day of the tsunami, it was stationed at the pier. When the tsunami was finally over, the boat was gone. It became a ghost ship, drifting aimlessly through the ocean. But the reason the US Coast Guard got involved was that the fishing ship was heading towards shipping lanes used by cargo vessels sailing between North America and Asia. The fishing boat was first spotted by the Canadians in their water near British Columbia, but it soon drifted down closer to California. Rather than risking a shipping boat smacking into the thing and causing disaster, they just decided to sink it. After all, it was the definition of a ghost ship. It had no lights, there was nobody on board, and it was carrying 9,000 liters of diesel fuel. The best place for it, apparently, was at the bottom of the ocean. Number 4. The Nenina Yacht. The Nenina Yacht, a legendary 50-foot schooner, was once the flagship of the New York Yacht Club. This was in 2013, but then it disappeared without a trace, with the owner, his wife, their teenage son, and 4 of the crew members. The Nenina left the Bay of Islands near New Zealand on May 29th, headed for Australia. It was only 1,500 miles away and should have taken the crew just 8 days. On June 12th, friends and family were worried because the vessel never showed up. Rescuers searched 737 nautical miles of ocean and found no sign of the boat or its crew. And this was bizarre because the search was extremely thorough. If the ship was out there, they should have found it. The only thing that made any sense was that the ship sank. The final communication that the ship had with the outside world was following a storm. They claimed that their storm sails were shredded and that they had been affected by the weather, though they didn't give any indication that they were in distress. Could their boat have sank abruptly because of unrealized damage? Or is there something more nefarious at work here, responsible for the vanishing of these 7 people? As of right now, nobody knows. Number 3. Belle Amica. When the twin-masted sail vessel, the Belle Amica, was discovered empty off the coast of Italy, police discovered a half-eaten meal, piles of clothes thrown across the floor, and charts of the Mediterranean Sea spread over the table. Nobody was on board, and there was no obvious place for them to have gone. The mystery was made even stranger by the fact that nobody knows who it belonged to. When it was found, the winds were pushing it against the rocky shore, threatening to destroy it. The Coast Guard worked together with the police to try and establish whether the yacht had been abandoned on purpose or if something stranger had happened. They were also working to try and find and identify the crew. The boat was not registered, and no vessels were reported missing. No people were reported missing either. The mystery still hasn't been solved. A spokesman at the Harbor Master's office was last quoted as saying that the discovery of the vessel was a complete mystery. But it seems they haven't been able to solve the mystery, as this happened in 2006, and the identities of whoever was on board have yet to be discovered. What happened here and where the boat even came from is anybody's guess. Number 2. High Aim 6. Investigators in Australia back in 2003 were trying to piece together what happened to the ship, the High Aim 6, between October 31st, when it left the port in Lukyu in Taiwan, and January 8th, when it was boarded by Navy personnel off the coast of Western Australia. The ship was Taiwanese-owned, and the best guess was that it ran out of fuel and left the unfortunate souls on board with no other option than to drift deeper and deeper into the Indian Ocean, then try to escape with lifeboats. However, this theory doesn't make a lot of sense, considering the boat was discovered to be filled with fuel and stocked with plenty of food and water. There was also no evidence that the lifeboats had been launched, leaving authorities with absolutely no idea what happened to those on board. They didn't flee, they didn't run out of supplies, and their vessels showed no evidence of damage or being boarded by pirates. In the hold of the boat was even a small catch of rotting fish. They had been in the middle of fishing when something caused all the crew members to vanish into thin air. Oh yeah, and the waters at the time of the crew vanishing were calm and serene. There was literally nothing that could have possibly happened to make them go overboard. To this day, the mystery has never been solved. And number 1, SS Sabrina. The SS Sabrina was built in 1873 at Whitstable in the United Kingdom. She was a sailing barge intended for trade on the River Plate in South America. But in October of 1917, she was found run aground on the French coast with her crew missing and no sign of them. She had sailed out of England under the command of Captain Martin with a crew bound for France. 2 days later, she was found without any damage to her hull or rigging, yet her crew was gone. At the time, it was thought that her crew had been stolen by a German submarine, which then fled the area before it was able to sink the SS Sabrina to get rid of the evidence. But there was no record of a German submarine doing this, which makes the theory a little shaky, unless, that is, the submarine with the stolen crew members was sunk by British forces before it had a chance to unload them. In any case, nobody knows what happened to the crew of the Sabrina. The ship was sunk in 1953 after being destroyed by a mysterious fire. Thanks for watching. Which of these ghost ships creeped you out the most? Let us know in the comments, and be sure to hit subscribe and come back soon for another amazing video. See you next time.